Lezlie Show. This is my first show and I am really excited. I have a lot of amazing guests lined up for this series. Oh my gosh, we're going to have such a great time. I have baseball players, I have basketball players, musicians, I have artists, I have people that own vineyards. It's going to be a blast. I'm excited as well because next week is my birthday. I'm turning 70. Not really. I just wanted you to see how good I looked. Anyway, as us women, we get older, sometimes we get a little insecure about our looks. I asked my husband the other day, I said, honey, would you still love me if I get wrinkles and I gain weight, get the gray hair and everything? And he says, you know, Toots, I can't believe you think I'm that shallow. I'd always love you. I'd probably miss you, but I'd always love you. Really? Then I went to Bevmo the other day getting my favorite bottle of wine, and the guy asked me how old I am, and I told him I'm 60, and he said, you don't look at all 60. And I said, well, how old do you think I am? And he said, well, I thought you were at least 65. Oh, some of these people need to go to the Dale Carnegie course. How to win friends and influence people. Anyway, getting back to the show again, I have an amazing guest today. Her name is Lisa Kowalski, and she is a fitness trainer at the Kennedy Center in Arroyo Grande and San Luis Obispo. Her credential is in kinesiology, and we're going to talk today about getting your mojo back. We're going to learn about having more energy, more passion. Sometimes, do you ever wake up out of bed and you just feel kind of like a blob? Or do you ever feel lethargic, or I don't know, you don't feel right? Well, Lisa's going to talk to us today about getting that mojo back. So let's give a nice welcome for Lisa Kowalski. Lisa, nice to see you too. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Well, I'm so excited to finally meet you.
I know,
Oh.
it's been wonderful. We've talked on the phone, but we haven't met.
We finally did.
Yes.
So your degree is in kinesiology. Can you tell us a little about what that word means?
Yeah, so kinesiology is the study of human movement. So it's a lot of anatomy and a lot of physiology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you were telling me too that you were diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and I remember you were saying you just felt down in the dumps, lethargic, no energy, and look at yourself now. It seems like you're a ball of energy. You're teaching these classes, and you would never know that. So I thought you could share with people what all these people don't have rheumatoid arthritis, but what can people do to start feeling better? Maybe you could talk about your story, what you went through, and what made you feel better.
Well, I think as we age, we always kind of look for the magic pill, right? So when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, it was almost 10 years ago. And at the time, I was going through a really stressful time in my life. My husband was going through a kidney transplant, and my dad had just passed. And so it was really kind of this morphing of all these things that were happening. And it turned out that I woke up one morning and I was really stiff and really sore. And so went to the doctor. They said, oh, you're just overtraining. I've always been really fit. So after a lot of tests, they figured out I had RA. So it turns out that what you eat and how you eat plays a huge factor in your energy level, but also if you have an autoimmune disease, it really is a huge help to know what you should and shouldn't eat.
Okay, well maybe you can go over some of the basics. I'm thinking that maybe people are tired a lot due to their diets.
Absolutely.
What would you suggest for people to eat for breakfast when you wake up in the morning? I know the typical person says, oh, I'm going to go have flapjacks and I'm going to go have some coffee. I'm thinking, well, you might feel good, but the sugar is probably going to bring you down later. So maybe you can tell us some basic tips about eating that would make us feel energized throughout the day.
Well, I think the big component with it is making sure that you're eating clean. And clean eating is trying to stay, if you grocery shop, trying to stay on the perimeter of the grocery store. So all your produce and all your lean meats and all of those things are going to be on the perimeter of the store. And the middle of the store is going to be all of your processed food. So trying to stay away from your white sugars and white flours and all of those things are super important. But I think making sure that each time you eat balanced. So you eat a healthy fat, you eat some kind of a lean protein, and if you're vegetarian, finding a protein that works for you. And then finding a carbohydrate that's you're not gonna just burn right through it. So I think those are important ideas while you're eating. So for breakfast, to answer your question, trying to have a healthy fat. So for me, a lot of times I'll just do like an egg white, a couple egg whites, and either some kind of like a nut butter, or maybe even that can be on a little piece of toast. But I don't eat gluten, so that's kind of a challenge sometimes. But finding a good gluten-free bread, and then also maybe having some avocado or some healthy fat. And I find that stays with people longer than just having a big bowl of oatmeal or something like that. So trying to stay as balanced as possible.
Okay, and you're saying, now, should we be eating 3 meals a day, or do you suggest eating little meals throughout the day, or?
I think it's personal preference, really. I tell my clients, as long as you don't feel starving, you know, when you go to eat, that you're hungry, but that you're not so starving that you choose things that you shouldn't eat. Because I think once we get to that starving point, then it's whatever you can put in your mouth, right?
Okay.
So I have a lot of people eat 5 times a day. They eat 3 big meals and 2 snacks, and that typically keeps their blood sugar even.
Okay. Now, how do you feel about calorie counting?
It depends. I think overall, fitness has always been, you know, burn as many calories as you put in and you'll maintain. But I think that there are a lot of people out there that are super active and they need more. They need more calories, or they need more nutrition before they go to bed. I know that's a big taboo to not eat before you go to bed, but it's also the quality of food that you eat. So I have a lot of ladies who wake up in the middle of the night and they have a lot of hard time, you know, staying asleep throughout. And blood sugar plays a factor in that. So having, you know, a little piece of toast with some peanut butter on it, or something that has a little bit of protein in it that you can eat that'll keep you sleeping at night. So I don't usually count calories as much as I count quality of food.
Okay. That's one thing I've noticed. A lot of people are tired because they don't sleep right. They tell me they get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and they're thinking and they can't go back to sleep. So you're saying that's blood sugar related?
A lot of times it is. It can be, you know, it can be your cortisol and all the things that happen throughout the day. If you had a stressful day, all of those play in a factor. But I've noticed that a lot of times if I eat a little bit of protein before I go to bed, I stay asleep longer.
Okay, that makes sense. Maybe you can tell us a few other snacks or lunches, like what would be a good lunch that you would say would keep the energy going?
Well, it pretty much depends. Like for me, or some people with autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's is a thyroid autoimmune disease that I have a lot of clients that have, women. And so eating gluten and dairy are really no-nos. But there's really 5 foods that I try to tell people if they're feeling lethargic and out of whack, maybe their digestive system's not working totally well, they don't feel energetic, I have them cut out 5 foods that are problematic. So it's dairy and gluten, egg almost always, and corn, because corn can be a factor, and then soy. So those 5 things come in so many of our foods. But if they do an elimination diet of at least a month, I usually tell them 3 months, eliminate those foods completely and see how they feel. And then start to introduce just one at a time and see what their symptoms are. But if you ate something, let's see, today's Friday or Saturday, and you go back 4 days, almost always you'll have symptoms 4 days later. So it's not just, oh, I ate it yesterday and now I feel yucky. You have to really evaluate what you've eaten throughout the week.
Well, what about going to an allergist? Would they be able to tell you what foods you can eat or not eat, or is that not really accurate?
It's a blood test. It's called an ALCAT. You have to ask for it because a lot of the allergy doctors don't really test for those things. They'll do a scratch test on your back. Sometimes that's food related, sometimes it's not. Okay. So after I was diagnosed with RA, I had an ALCAT test. I went to a nutritionist and she suggested I did that. And it turned out that I was almost where I was so sensitive to gluten that I shouldn't eat it. So I was close to being celiac, which I didn't know. I was eating a sandwich at lunch, or a half a sandwich, and I'd have some cheese with it. It has changed my physique completely by cutting those foods out.
Oh my goodness.
Just my inflammation and my pain and all of those things.
I'm just wondering if most people are allergic to gluten.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of a trend. You know, people say, oh, I don't eat gluten, but in theory, it is an inflammatory food. It's really just how our foods are processed now. It's really a hard thing to keep eating. Unless you get a really good quality piece of bread or whatever you're eating for your gluten, it's really hard for your body to process.
Okay, and you're saying the dairy products are difficult to process as well.
A lot of times they are. And what happened with me was there are 2 proteins in dairy There's whey and there's casein. Whey is like the watery kind of stuff that when you open like sour cream, it's that watery stuff on top. The casein is the powerhouse protein, and I was allergic to it. But I didn't know. So I would eat yogurt, and then I'd feel really bad later. I'd feel lethargic, and I wouldn't be able to sleep. My joints would be hurting. So I find a lot of things are not necessarily digestive. People say, oh, I'm allergic to it, and they eat it, and it's, oh, now my tummy hurts. Well, it also can be joint related. It can be fatigue related. So food plays a big factor in how we feel.
Okay, so let's repeat this so everybody remembers. You're saying soy could be one, eggs could be another one, and breads. Gluten from the bread. Now they do have bread that is not gluten.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And the dairy. So those are the ones.
And then corn.
And corn too. Okay, I've heard about the corn and. Okay, I didn't know about the soy, so that's another one. And here, back in the day, everybody's supposed to be switching over to soy, and now they're saying it's not the most healthy thing to do.
No, it's not, because it's almost bioidentical to estrogen.
Okay.
So people have a hard time with it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, too, the way it's being processed now, unless it's really non-GMO, you have to be careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what do you eat for lunch? Let's get to some other meals. What that might be good and maybe not that difficult to make. Are you into salads?
Yeah, absolutely. And making your own salad dressing is really the best way to go. I mean, it's so easy, and there's so many great things. Pinterest and online, you just search up, healthy salad dressing, and there's so many out there because the processed ones all have gluten in them.
Oh.
All of them.
Oh.
You have to look. Yeah. So modified food starch, if you see that, that's gluten almost always.
Oh.
Soy sauce, gluten.
Okay.
But it also has soy in it. So you have to be really careful. If you're gluten-free, if you're truly gluten-free, you have to be really careful what you eat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you have for lunch to make you said you have a fat and a carbohydrate and a protein. What do you eat for lunch?
So I'll do a big salad, and I'll either do some leftover chicken or shrimp or whatever that I've had for my protein, usually 4 to 6 ounces. And then avocado or some nuts.
Okay.
Yeah, so and then my own dressing, I'll just make, like lemon juice and something like that. That's super healthy, but I find that I'm always hungry after that.
Okay.
So either finding a good quality protein shake that you can drink or something that you can supplement your protein, because I find that most of my women, especially my women clients, don't get enough protein.
Okay. Well, how many grams of protein do we need a day?
It depends on the person, and we can usually assimilate about 30 grams a sitting.
Oh, per sitting?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So that's important. So I find that if I can keep my calories to 35% protein, 35% carbohydrate, and 30 fat, I find that I work the most efficiently that way. So I think most people can go on MyFitnessPal. It's just a free app you can get on your phone. And you log in everything you eat, and it tells you what your ratios are for macronutrients. So it's really helpful. So I have all my clients do that just because I think it's helpful to see. So, for example, I have a woman who I've been training for marathons. And she came to me before and said, I'm not leaning out. I run with all these women and they're so lean and I don't understand why I'm still so stocky. So I said, okay, let's analyze what you're eating. She was training, she was running 10 miles a day. She was doing all the things she needed to do to get ready. And so I looked at her proteins and I looked at what she was eating as far as her macronutrients, which are carbohydrate, protein, and fat. She was eating 65% fat. And the reason why is because she would eat almond butter as a recovery, or she would put almond butter on her toast, or she would eat all egg, in the morning for fuel. And she was realizing that her little snacks that she thought were healthy weren't. They had a lot of fat in them. And she was reaching for a handful of almonds for her protein. Well, almonds are all fat. Mm-hmm. So just educating her on what a protein would be for her. Mm-hmm. So we tweaked it a little bit, and she's leaning out like crazy.
Oh my goodness.
And she's getting the body she wants, which is really fun.
So she gave up the nuts. What does she eat for the protein? More like chicken or fish instead?
Mm-hmm. Lean.
Okay, so
lean proteins.
So basically what you're saying is the fats, the ranch dressings, the butters, the sour creams, that's what puts the fat on your stomach, or if wherever you want to lose weight?
Not necessarily. Eating fats are definitely appropriate. It's just making sure that you're your ratios of protein and carbohydrate and fat are appropriate.
Okay.
So she was just eating way too much fat, healthy fat,
Okay.
avocado and all those things that are really good for you. She was just eating too much of them. So it was
Okay.
portion control for her too.
Okay, right. Now, is there a special name for this diet that you recommend?
I just call it clean eating.
Clean eating. Okay.
And it's really not it's not rocket science by any means. It's really just finding foods that would either grow in the ground or that would be non-processed. So of course we process our meat, but if you can find grass-fed stuff, if you can find things that don't have the hormones in them or the nitrates, that kind of stuff. So sometimes for lunch I'll get nitrate-free turkey meat, and I'll roll those up in a piece of romaine lettuce with some hummus. So things like that can be healthy too.
So do you find this diet picks up your spirits too?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Gives me so much more energy. I have a really hard time digesting junk, even though it's attractive and it's fun to eat. It doesn't help us. It really doesn't. The processed food is really hard on our bodies.
I find it really interesting when you go to the doctor and you tell the doctor, I think I'm kind of depressed or I feel anxious. The first thing they want to do is give you a pill. They don't even ask, what did you eat? Maybe your diet's contributing to your depression or your anxiety.
Right.
They don't ask, how many cups of
No.
coffee are you drinking?
No.
That could be causing your anxiety.
Right.
So I found that true myself. What I eat seems to affect my mood.
Yeah, and it was shocking to me that the first rheumatoid doctor I went to told me that nutrition wasn't going to be a factor. And so I went to Stanford and I talked to them, and they do research. They're constantly researching. And the woman that I go to has 2 people right now that do a paleo diet, paleo is basically, if a caveman could have found it somewhere and ate it, it would be appropriate. So really not grains, really not any, but lean proteins and anything that you would grow out of the ground kind of thing.
Okay.
And 2 of the women went into full remission without drugs, eating that way.
Oh my goodness.
And for me, I was on 4 drugs to start, and now I'm only on 2.
Really?
So it makes a big difference that no, my RA is not going to go away, but it could be in remission, which is huge. And now I can I can function. I can do my job. I can teach classes, and I feel strong. I don't feel hindered.
And you need a lot of energy to teach those classes.
Yes.
How many classes a day do you teach?
Well, I teach Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay.
But I have 14 personal training clients.
Oh my goodness.
So I mix them in when I can.
Okay.
Some of them like me to work out with them, some of them don't. Some of them like me to swim with them, some of them don't. So I'm in and out of the pool, and then I'm, at the gym. And
Okay.
I counted one day after having 8 clients how many lunges and squats I did, and it was something astronomical, like 400 squats by the end of the day, just being with them and working with them. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's super fun. I enjoy it, and it keeps me young.
That's awesome. Well, I've taken different classes at the gyms, and some of them are very intimidating. And I thought if they're intimidating for me and I'm in halfway decent shape, how would it be for somebody else going into these different gyms? Would you be able to teach us maybe a few exercises everybody could do just to maybe give us a little bit more energy to get our mojo back, or nothing real strenuous or anything, but when we wake up in the morning, should we stretch? If we should, what type of stretching should we do?
Well, it pretty much has to do with what the person's goals are. So if I meet with someone, if I was going to train you, I would ask you what your goals were. If you had any injuries or any existing things that are nagging you that would prevent you from exercise. And then we talk a little bit about what that would look like for you. What do you do during the day? What are your goals as far as at the end of the day, what do you want your fitness to look like? Mm-hmm. So I know a lot of people work at desks. So when you sit at a desk, your hip flexors shorten. And so just getting up and standing, so even if I just stood up, I lengthen these hip flexors. So if I turn to the side and do a squat, they shorten as I sit and they lengthen as I stand. So just doing this kind of stuff every day, maybe pick, 3 times a day that you do 10 of them.
Okay.
Another thing would be a lunge where you could step back just a bit, being upright in your body and pulling your belly button in. And sinking straight down and coming back up lengthens that hip flexor, but also strengthens this quadricep. So what I try to do with most of my clients is find overall body movements that they can do to burn the most calories. So let's say I squat and I press over my head, or I squat and I bring my arms out to the sides, or I lunge and I bicep curl. And this can all just be body weight stuff that you can do at home.
Okay.
So really cool stuff. But the goal is to try to keep your core engaged. And what your core is from your armpit to your hip and all the way around. So I always tell people, pull your belly button in like you're trying to put on a tight pair of pants.
Okay.
And pretty much everyone knows what that means, which is pretty scary. Pull your belly button in like you're going to snap it into your spine. And stabilize that while you're just standing in line at the bank or whatever. And pull your core in and then release it. Pull your core in and release it. And then if anyone's working on their balance, and I do that with all my older clients, is stand on one foot while you're waiting at the bank. Oh. Challenge your balance and make a mental note of right and left, because almost always someone has a dominant side.
Okay.
So challenging your balance, looking away, raising your arms, doing those things. And I work with all of my clients, with whatever age they are, to prevent falls. Because once you fall and you injure yourself, then it's much harder to come back. So,
well, how do we prevent ourselves from falling?
I try as much as I can. My oldest client is 84, and my youngest client is 41. So I work a lot with posture, sitting up nice and tall when they're walking, being able to look forward and onto the ground versus their feet, because as we age, we end up like this.
Okay.
And so I find that once they fixate on the ground and start looking at their feet, then they could easily trip and their core's not engaged. Mm-hmm. So I have them sit and work on shoulders back and work on posture. And then anything I do with them, whatever exercise we do, I have them either stand on one foot or I have them stand on an uneven surface. So barefoot on carpet or barefoot on a folded up yoga mat. Mm-hmm. Something that's unbalanced or unstable challenges all those little muscles in your ankles and your legs to help you be more stable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe you could give us just a couple more demonstrations, because I want to make sure we did it a little bit quickly so people really digest this. If you could go over the exercises one more time of just the lunge, maybe do that 3 times and just repeat it just to make sure everybody has it, because it's kind of a lot of information.
Well, the key to any exercise really is making sure that your core is strong and that you're upright in your body. Okay. So I find a lot of people when they squat, their calves are too tight and they end up like this. Okay. And so this is just creating a whole nother level of unbalanced. So I want to be as upright as possible, and I'm going to sink into my heels as much as I can so that if you can see my shin and my body, I'm creating 2 parallel lines. Okay. So once I lean forward and do that, these lines aren't parallel anymore. Can you see that?
Yes.
So as I sit down in my heels, I should only go as far as I can still keep these lines parallel. Okay. So proper alignment is so important there. And then thinking about maybe keeping a fist width or an orange width of your knees apart so they don't cave in and come forward. Okay. And then the same thing with a lunge. You want to take a big enough step here that as you sink down, this shin does not travel forward. Okay. So as I sink down, you'll see a lot of people, they don't take a big enough step, and then this happens.
Oh.
Okay.
Right.
Now there's shearing force on the kneecap, so that's really scary. But I have my older clients take big enough steps front to back that even if they just do a small range of motion, they can still get it done.
Okay.
Okay.
And how many lunges should you do a day?
Well, I find that people, if they can do sets, like if they don't belong to a gym and they still want to stay active and current in what they're doing, whether they're golfers or walkers or hikers or whatever, I have them do 10 of them 3 times a day. So I'm in the bank lunging, I'm waiting at the grocery store, I'm squatting, But even as my clients age, the number one thing I have them do is sit to stand. So I'm going to sit down and touch my bum onto the couch, and then I'm going to stand back up. Okay. Because as they age, that's the first thing they need to be able to do without assistance. Mm-hmm. And so those are the kind of things that I have them work on. Maybe even working your core, so pulling your belly button in as you lift your knee. Okay. So I'm still pulling my belly button in and I'm forcing my core to work. Mm. This is still a hip flexor move, but it's also a core exercise too. Okay. So things like that are really easy to do just in your everyday life. Right?
And do you do any positive affirmations while you exercise too?
Oh, all the time.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, because I always find that I always say, nobody's going to take my mojo today. Because you always run into these people. They're in the grocery stores, they're in the banks, wherever they happen to be, and they say something or do something, and you go, oh, I don't know if I feel so good now. But
Right.
you program yourself ahead of time. Nobody's taking away my mojo. It's going to be a great day.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what you do as well?
Your attitude, it's funny that we talked a little bit about that because throughout my coaching and my sports psychology, we always talked about the attitude you bring to the day. And I think it's so important that people do that because then that changes everything about how you look at your day. So we had a saying that was 10/90. We'd say 10/90 to each other, all my teams. And it meant life is 10% of what happens to me and 90% of how I respond.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
So I can bring 10/90 with me everywhere. I can to the grocery store or to work or to wherever. But, really life is life, right?
Yes.
But it's how you look at it. You could be a victim or you can be a survivor.
Exactly.
Right.
And you've definitely proven the point, having the rheumatoid arthritis, and look how good, you'd never even know that you have that.
Well, thank you.
While you're doing it. So let's just talk about what we learned today. So it starts out with, I hate the word diet, let's just say lifestyle change.
Absolutely.
Try to give up the eggs if they don't agree with you, give up the soy, the corn, the gluten, you said, and the sugars and the dairies. Okay. And
I don't think that's not a standard, but I find that when people come to me and they say, I'm so tired and I don't feel strong, I have joint pain, we look at their diet first.
Okay.
So I always like to say nutrition instead of diet because diet is like a 4-letter word.
yeah,
right?
like you're dying, right?
Right?
Uh-huh.
So it's a choice.
Okay.
It's a choice of what goes in your mouth, but I tell people too that your body will not hide what you put in your mouth when you're home with the doors closed, right? So when you come out and I see that you haven't lost the weight that you've wanted to, something's not right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So we do the diet, and then you showed us a few good moves to do throughout the day in the bank or in the store or wherever you. And then the attitude. Attitude is everything. Just keep in mind, nobody's taking away my mojo because I'm in control of how I feel, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Lisa. It has been such a pleasure having you on the show. And
it's been fun.
Once again, Lisa works at the Kennedy Sports Center in Arroyo Grande and San Luis Obispo. And I hope you join us again sometime.
I would love to come.
It's really been a pleasure. So thank you very much, Lisa.
For having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had as much fun as I did. I am really looking forward to my next show too. I'm having Bren Smith, the baseball player, on next, and he has quite a story to tell. I think you'll find him very interesting. I also want to give a special thanks to Stephen and Dale. You guys did an awesome job helping me with all the technical aspects. So anyway, have a great week. Don't let anybody take your mojo, and have fun, eat clean, exercise, and have a wonderful week. Woohoo! Bye.